Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very happy and very honored to be here today at this event. I believe it's more important than we all really realize it is. And I'm happy to have people in this room listening to what we have to say today. I believe that human rights and women's rights for today, we're speaking about women's rights, should be at the core of all of our existence. It's something I fight for daily and many people in this room fight for on a daily basis. There is a tide coming. I think we can all feel it. Gender equality is getting a lot more attention these days. Some say it's a new wave of feminism. I don't really know what that means. It's almost as if it's a bad thing. Whatever it's being called, I'm glad we're talking about it. And I'm very glad to have people's attention. Today, I'll be speaking about child marriage and sex trafficking, two very heavy topics that, although are so different, they have a very common theme. Child marriage. Every year, 15 million girls under the age of 18 will be married, and most of them will not have any say in the matter. Some child brides may be as young as 8 or 9, and we have seen them younger. 1 in 9 girls in the developing world, 1 in 9, so imagine 9 girls in this room, 1 of them will be married before the age of 15. Child marriage is not exclusive to any particular religion, let's clarify that. And ethnic groups, different ethnic groups use this practice. It's common in many countries around the world. Although most countries have laws banning child marriage, tradition lives on and dies very, very hard. Child marriage begins in the life of the girl's mother and the girl's grandmother. It is rooted in gender inequality and made worse by poverty, unequal access to education, insecurity, and, yes, conflict, times of war. Most of these young girls are not ready for their new roles as wives. Child marriage is the end of opportunity, the stifling of potential, the casting aside of education, and the end of chasing dreams for very young girls who are just coming into their own skin. It robs them of the ability to lead healthy, happy, and equal lives. And it robs us of the untapped talent and power they have to offer. The impacts of child marriage is profound. Health. Child marriage has grave consequences for a girl's health. Sexual activity is inevitable, okay, and often forced, at an age when a girl's body is still growing, and when they possess little or no information of their sexual reproductive health or rights. When girls marry as children, family planning methods go out the window, and it's hard to negotiate consensual sex with their often older husbands. Then, the social pressure to have children and prove their only value as a woman takes over. It's time to be a mom. A girl in Malawi was married at the age of 14, and she was interviewed and said this about her first pregnancy. "One time, my stomach started getting big, and I was having severe headaches. I was scared and I didn't know what was happening. I went to the hospital, and that's when I found out I was 6 months pregnant." Child brides are not physically or emotionally ready to deliver a baby and face a higher risk of death in childbirth. Girls under 15 are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than girls aged 20 plus. And children, the babies born to child brides, they also suffer. Healthy mothers have healthy babies. This is not rocket science, and it's not news. So when a mother is under 20, unhealthy, her child is 50% more likely to die in their first year of life. A way to decrease maternal and infant mortality is to end child marriage. It's quite simple. The psychological trauma and depression and constant fear many child brides experience is astounding. For those with especially older husbands, they find themselves being raised by their spouses instead of growing together with them. Children cannot defend themselves against violence as easy as adults. We know this. Girls who are married as children are more likely to experience physical abuse and repeated sexual violence by their husbands. most often it continues past their 18th birthday and down to the next generation. A study in northern Ethiopia found that 81% of child brides described their first sexual encounter with their husband as rape. It was forced. 81% is staggering, and marital rape is a scary reality for a lot of girls who find it difficult to express their needs or negotiate consensual sex, especially when her husband is much older, and he often is. This is also why HIV/AIDS is very prevalent among child brides. The practice of child brides also perpetuates honor killings. UNICEF reports that in areas of Bangladesh, Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey, the killing of young women who go against the wishes of their parents to marry a certain someone or who flee a violent marriage continue to occur. In contrast, child marriage is sometimes used to offset violence. Let me explain. In situations of war and conflict, when the risk of physical and sexual violence is very high, parents might choose to marry their daughters off as a way of ensuring their safety, as we've seen with Syrian refugees. Ali from Lebanon said this: "My daughter is 16 and loves school. She was at the top of her class and wanted to become an architect. But we were too worried for her. They were attacking women, old, young, everyone. We could not protect her, so we had to marry her. She's very innocent and pretty. She did not want to get married. She wanted to study. This is happening a lot in Syria. Many women I know are marrying their daughters to protect them." These are scary and desperate times for parents, and they may think that they're protecting them, but child marriage does not protect anyone. Education. 60% of child brides have had no formal education. 60%. When a mother has at least 7 years of education, just 7 years, mortality rates of children are 58% lower. She marries later. She has fewer and healthier children. I was recently in South Asian with Aura Freedom performing a study which aimed to identify the barriers that girls face in attending school. Why aren't they attending school? Why aren't they continuing to secondary school? In every single interview and focus group, villagers said early and child marriage was one of the main barriers that girls face in continuing their studies. One girl told me, this girl told me that she thought girls shouldn't get married until they finish school. Makes sense, right? She looked down and smiled shyly as I wrote down her answers. This same young girl was breastfeeding a baby while I spoke to her daughter, yes. I couldn't help but think, what is going to happen to that girl, to that baby? The cycle of child marriage was right in front of our eyes. Of course she wants different for her daughter. Of course all parents want better for their children, but will she be able to rise above tradition? What tools does she have? How can the cycle of poverty be broken without education, formal or informal? How can a girl learn skills to develop and earn an income, increase her confidence, and contribute positively to society and to her community? The reality is, once they have children, they won't go back to school. And the low status of girls and women continues over and over again. Some parents simply don't see the value in educating a girl, and they're kind of right. In their communities, why should we educate her when she's just going to get married and have children soon? They opt to send their sons to school instead. Here lies the problem. And the solution to this is, of course, the problem: education. Educated girls marry later. They have fewer children and lead healthier lives. Excuse me. Because they are empowered to practice their human rights. And one of those is the decision to marry who, when, and if they want to. Poverty, cause and consequence. There's that vicious circle again. Child brides are more likely to be poor and stay poor. And being poor is one of the factors that increases the risk of child marriage. Girls from poor families are twice as likely to become child brides. So child marriage is a poverty trap. Girls who marry young are denied an education, stripping them of their skills they need to earn an income and break the cycle of poverty, and their children are very likely to live the same life. But of course, the cycle of poverty can be broken. We've heard this all morning. If a girl stays in school, she's likely to be healthier, wealthier, and happier. And her children, when she decides to have them, will also be healthier, wealthier, and happier. This is how you create change. Let's not forget that all of these stats, these numbers, are people, human beings. In the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the 1940s, the right to free and full consent to marriage is recognized. CEDAW prohibits child marriage. The Convention on the Rights of the Child makes child marriage impossible to even conceive. Child marriage is not part of anyone's culture. Let's get that straight. It is not cultural. It is a harmful practice and tradition stemming from deeply rooted patriarchal views. I don't think violence is part of anyone's culture. The devaluing of a girl child and a preference for sons. Here lies the problem. Yes, poverty exacerbates the problem, absolutely. But if more value was placed on girls from the beginning, parents would think twice before arranging a child marriage. They would invest in their daughter's education just as much as their sons for the benefit of everyone. How do we place more value on girls? Well, educate her and she'll place the value on herself. She'll do all the work. This is not rocket science. She will be a catalyst for change larger than you can imagine. I would like to see the world interested in eradicating child marriage, not only because it helps development and grows the economy, but because it is the right and just thing to do. Because it will enhance and enrich the lives of countless girls, allowing them to live healthier and more fulfilled lives, free from violence. Girls are more than domestic slaves, sexual objects, bearers of children, field workers. They are human beings with a lot to give. During a focus group Aura Freedom conducted in Midwestern Nepal, where child marriage stands at 53%, I asked a group of young girls, what are some of the things girls need to be happy and healthy? Over and over and over again, I heard affectionate parents, freedom, education, the ability to laugh, encouragement. These are not new ideas, guys. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. However, it is our responsibility to stand up for these girls and to listen to them when they speak. They will do the rest of the work. Sex trafficking. Moving on to another heavy topic, I'll touch on sex trafficking and then I'll connect the two themes together. This is a story from Nepal and I've changed the name. Maya was 12 when her father told her that he was going to take her to a town to meet a woman who would give her a job. They walked 2 days to reach the town, and Maya was so excited about traveling beyond her village. There they met a woman who told her father she would look after Maya. She gave him $50, an enormous sum for a very poor farmer. Maya's father seemed very sad to say goodbye, and he promised his daughter that he would see her again in a year or two. The woman then took Maya to a larger town, where 2 other girls about her age joined them for a journey across the border to India. The woman had friends who arranged for documentation, and the girls enjoyed the novelty of riding on a train for the first time. Upon their arrival in Calcutta, different country, they're in India now, the girls were taken to a crowded part of the city and sold to a brothel owner, just like that. They were indoctrinated into the sex trade, raped, severely beaten, and tortured as initiation. The girls had no idea what was involved. They were taught brutally and told they would have to work for the first year to pay off the debt given to their fathers, the amount that had been paid for them, plus the food and clothing which kept piling on. Maya remained in the brothel for 2 years until she became ill and she was dumped out on the street, just like that. Social workers helped her return to Nepal, where she now lives with 15 other survivors, all HIV positive, in a house in Kathmandu. She is learning to sew, and she can't go back home. Maya's story is sadly very common. Whether it's Nigerian girls trafficked into Italy, Nepalese girls to India, Ukrainian girls to the USA, or girls from Toronto being trafficked right here within our own city and enslaved in hotels that you've all probably stayed at. Sex trafficking is prevalent in almost every country of the world. Here's some data. Sex trafficking is an illicit activity. Statistics online are patched together from different sources and for the most part unreliable. Even the most recent UN Global Report on Trafficking in Persons does its best to provide maybe a ballpark figure for most countries involved in the study, even though trafficking exists around the globe. It's an underground activity. It involves organized crime and mafia, so this lack of data makes sense. Victims are also reluctant to speak. Why? Well, they will face extreme torture and trauma, and various immigration traps that they face in many countries force them to keep their mouths closed. Yes, we need more data, but I have a love-hate relationship with data. On one hand, I need them to make my points and my cases. We need them to paint pictures and to seek help. On the other hand, I think, if we know that human trafficking is happening all over the world, isn't that enough? How much more data do we need to show, to turn heads, to get people to say, it's time? One child, one woman is too many. To me, it should be enough to hear the story of one girl to push governments to do more. A girl who was promised a fruit stand in the big city that would earn her enough money to support her parents, but was instead sold to a brothel, drugged, tortured, and raped daily for profit. To me, there is nothing worse than this. This is a complete absence of humanity. But we need more data. Isn't it enough to know that right here in Canada, 14-year-old girls are being lured from Facebook by pimps who play on their insecurities and start romances with them, gaining their trust, only to start demanding that they service their friends in a local hotel and torture them and threaten their family when they don't comply. Before the girls know it, they have become a slave to their pimp, are tattooed with his name, and feel completely worthless. Not to mention the fact that she is now addicted to drugs and alcohol, a steady supply from her pimp. Feelings of hopelessness are more powerful than anyone can ever imagine. A lack of hope and a steady dose of violence keeps these girls in their dog-like positions. Who is going to want me now? How will my family ever look at me the same? I am nothing. And our Indigenous girls are at an even higher risk than non-Indigenous right here in Canada. This is the face of human trafficking, no matter where it happens. It's a cycle of gaining trust, deceit, torturous initiation, daily abuse, branding, exploitation, and finally, discarding and stigma. The health consequences of human trafficking are profound and worse yet for younger women. The abuse, no, torture they endure results in broken bones that don't heal properly, cuts, burns, and other injuries, STIs, HIV/AIDS. Women and girls are forced to obey their pimps and traffickers' every conceivable desire or face the consequences, and often this means severe punishment, including death. When injury or illness is serious, brothel owners won't take a girl to the hospital with obvious signs of abuse. This is hard to hear, isn't it? It should be hard to hear. I can see that this is hard to hear. We have to stop whitewashing sex trafficking. It is horrific. Is this any life for a girl, for a woman? And what are we in governments doing about this? Impunity, the impunity in human trafficking is unbearable. Impunity for those who buy and sell sex. Conviction of traffickers, pimps, and Johns is not common. Sex trafficking is often dismissed as prostitution. But make no mistake, it is not the same thing. Women and children who are sold into the sex trade are not prostitutes. Child prostitutes do not exist. These two words should never go together. No child is a prostitute. They have been exploited into slavery. Services for survivors need to take precedent, and governments must exercise the laws that are already in place in most countries, which make trafficking of human beings illegal. But there is a gap, right, between policies on paper and what actually happens. Some countries are taking more efforts to crack down on trafficking. Yes, this is true. But the reality is it's an enormous global problem. We don't have time. Stigma. Stigma. The social stigma of sex work among societies is so strong that many families ostracize and disown their daughters after finding out that she's been sexually exploited, even though she had no control over the situation. Can you imagine dealing with this on top of all of the trauma? She is tainted, unfit for marriage. She has brought shame on the family. Not the trafficker, not the pimp, not the John, but the girl. Because of this, some survivors, of course, they return to the sex industry out of desperation and a way of earning an income when everyone else rejects her. Back in the brothels, she still can't use protection, and so HIV/AIDS keeps going around. Some sex workers who are trafficked end up recruiting girls themselves, considering it a promotion in the only line of work they see fit for themselves. After listening to all of this, I'm sure I don't have to explain that sex trafficking is a violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Articles 4, 5, and 13. Child marriage and human trafficking. What is the connection? Gender-based violence is part of a much larger, older story here. And that story begins with birth. It begins when parents rejoice at the birth of a son, but not of a daughter. When they hand out food and sweets so the whole community knows they've had a boy, and when a man beats his wife for bearing a daughter. Women are revered for how many sons they can have. And men are justified in taking a second wife if their first one cannot provide a namesake. It starts when boys are fed first and fed better, schooled longer and given more freedom to play, to roam, and to build confidence, while girls are confined to their homes for chores, babysitting, not schooled, and kept inside to keep their chastity as if their sexuality were a lethal weapon. It starts when menstruating girls are banned to sleep in animal sheds and not allowed to touch food or crops, when she can't laugh in public, and when her genitals are cut. It starts when girls have been given specific roles to fill in classrooms, in offices, in the home. And it continues when this girl's worth has everything to do with how long her eyelashes are and how many likes she can get for a picture of her own rear end on social media. But what happens after centuries of devaluing a girl, the second-class family member, yet the one responsible for all of the work? What happens is violence. What happens is that we start to see her as a commodity, one to be bought and sold, traded to settle debts, married off to release burdens, negotiated for higher dowries, to be beaten, raped, publicly mortified online, and abused by others, well, just because she isn't that important. When we can dehumanize someone, it allows us to be inhumane to them. When there is no value put on a girl, and when there is nothing that says how special and important and wanted she is, then it's no wonder men truly feel that they can do whatever they want to a girl. Just last week, one of the rapists from that horrific Delhi gang rape was interviewed in prison. This is a man on death row. He was asked about the incident, and his answers sent shockwaves everywhere and have kept me up ever since. They had a right to teach the girl a lesson, he said. She should have put up with it, he went on. When being raped, women shouldn't fight back. They should be silent and allow the rape. When we can dehumanize someone, it allows us to be humane to them. The main problem here, all of this, is gender inequality. So the data doesn't really matter. We must come back to humanity in order to right these wrongs. We must uphold everyone's human rights because we are all born with the same ones. People speak out about empowering women and girls to promote development, yes, and improve the economy, yes, and of course this is true. If you empower the other half of the globe's population, we will flourish. But to me, that should be the cherry on top, the bonus, and not the underlying reason why we care. The silver bullet, how can we solve this problem? I agree with our keynote speaker when I say it's simple, and we all know the answer: education. Not only because it will benefit the entire community and world, but because it is the right thing to do. It's time to listen to women and girls, to listen to survivors. We've heard that we must give women and girls a voice, but I believe they have a voice. It's just been muffled. Let's really listen to it. And I also have a quote about fire, which is very funny. Peter Gabriel, a singer, once said, "You can blow out a candle, but you can't blow out a fire." So I invite all of you to light the fire with us. Thank you.